Redwall's history is that of feudal lords, wandering tribes, and a constant threat of pirates and raiders. The world of Redwall is vast and a bit inconsistent. In the very first published book, there was mention of a horse-drawn carriage and evidence of humans maybe somewhere? Though, for the rest of the 20-plus book saga, that would be thrown out the window in favor of a universe just for talking animals. Author of the series, Brian Jacques, played his canon fast and loose and didn't worry over contradictions or inconsistencies. He knew he was writing for children. But I bet he didn't see a 20-something YouTuber coming for him. For this week's video, we will be looking at the overarching narrative of the Redwall universe. I'm your host, Arrkay, and the Long Patrol Hare Army of Salamandastron is culturally effed. The series was thought up by Brian Jacques, not to be confused with Brian Jacques, British judo champion. Born James Brian Jacques, June 15, 1939, and raised in Liverpool. He went by Brian because other family members used the name James. He had an early talent for writing. A teacher once caned him for an excellently written work that they believed he had copied. He wrote down Redwall to read to blind children at a school he delivered milk to. He also shared his manuscript with other close friends, including his former teacher, who forwarded it to a publishing house. A few days later, Brian was summoned to London to negotiate a deal for a 5-book series. Redwall takes place over several generations, largely in and near the region of Mossflower. As you can see on the map behind me, we have a few geological landmarks, including an extinct volcano, Mossflower Woods, which is about here. It's flanked to the north and south by arid grassy wastes, and to the east and west by much larger bodies of water. Mossflower is home to badgers, moles, mice, squirrels, rats, stoats, ferrets, weasels, foxes, many kinds of birds, giant snakes and eagles, cannibalistic lemurs, and many more woodland creatures. Extraordinarily little is revealed to the history prior to the events of the series, or even very much about the world and the lands beyond Mossflower. The books also make mention of a more tropical island chain far to the south, and a frigid, harsh, icy tundra far to the north. Since we don't know the history of the land, it's incredibly difficult to tell what exactly is going on politically or religiously. We are forced to make a best guess to its true nature. There is a religious class, as represented by the Abbey the series is based around, and a warrior class, repped by the main protagonists of the series. It seems that Mossflower itself is without rule or law, though there are towns and city-states with lords and even the occasional king or queen. But mostly everyone is in small communities or nomadic tribes. This makes me think that the system is feudal in nature, with a peasant class supporting a political and religious system. The birds in Mossflower adhere to a royal hierarchy of sorts, but it seems to exist outside of the goings-ons of the mammals. Raider bands, when they reach a critical mass, will sometimes have their leader pronounce themselves king or queen of wherever they happen to be, usually with a lot of resistance from the locals. Though in several cases there are longer-standing reigns of monarch-run city-states. Redwall's world reminds me of a medieval Europe prior to any empire in a state akin to the British Isles before Roman occupation. The religion in the Redwall series is vaguely Christian, but there's more worshipping of folk heroes than deities. Sometimes there are off-groups who seem to worship the large predators, and other times there's a general spiritualism or mysticism. It's so wishy-washy, but it leaves it open for nerds on YouTube like us to speculate about. That will have to be its own video, though. The map we're using is our own approximation. You can follow along on the Redwall Wiki's interactive map of Mossflower Woods. A more complete map, if also approximated like our own, we found this amazingly detailed fan-built Mossflower Risk game board. After some careful digging, I found the source files on Reddit to print and play at home. Links in the description. This Chronobus is spoiler-free because we skim over the vast details of the events of each book, and instead we're focusing less on individuals and more about the general groups and their interactions. We'll start here, a derelict volcano called Salamandastron. Literally translated means the mountain of the fire lizard. Inhabitants use the seaside volcano as a fort and a forge, making it a hub of military activity. No one knows who first founded Salamandastron. Only some ancient badger rulers are mentioned across several books. These were warlords, constantly feuding with the surrounding region. The first lord we meet in the series is Lord Stonepaw, who has managed to reach old age in a prolonged period of peace. In the first chronological book, named for Stonepaw's son, Lord Brocktree, Salamandastron is sacked and taken over by a band of seafaring pirates known as the Blue Horde, led by wildcat Ungat Trun. He would later be overtaken by Brocktree and his militia of hares, dubbed the Long Patrol. The mountain fortress would become a sacred site of pilgrimage for the Badgers of Mossflower. To the west, a small building is erected by mice from Mossflower. A mouse named Ninian, according to legend, was too lazy to help with construction, so his wife put up a sign, "This ain't Ninian's," which, over time, as other families moved in and out, the sign decayed, leading people to mistake it for a church named St. Ninian's when it was rediscovered after abandonment. Luke the Warrior was born here. His tribe would be pushed northward by a group of raiders living out of another abandoned structure, a fort called Katir. And I can already sense that a lot of this history is of mysterious abandoned and rediscovered buildings. Katir was built by a group called the Woodlanders, which refers to the mice, squirrels, moles, and voles, and other species who largely inhabit this region of Mossflower Woods, who at some point were thrown out or abandoned Katir. They are now the scattered, loosely connected communities of Mossflower. Verdaga Greeneyes, a wildcat warlord, led the force that pushed Luke the Warrior's tribe out of Mossflower. His army moves into Katir and would terrorize the surrounding areas to collect food and supposedly some kind of tax to support his army. Luke the Warrior's tribe moves north and eventually settles in a series of caves around here. A small resistance was attempted against Greeneyes but failed, with the deaths of many of the men and able warriors. Meanwhile, up north, Luke the Warrior has a son, Martin the Warrior, and after a pirate attack that killed his wife, Luke quests out to sea for revenge and adventure, a Redvenger. Before departing, he leaves Martin his sword. To the west of Luke and Martin's home, Badrang the Tyrant builds an army and begins to construct Fort Marshank in the novel Martin the Warrior. After Martin the Warrior almost gets enslaved, he leads an attack in the Battle of Marshank with the help of a group of privateers, read pirates working for the good guys. They manage to overrun and scatter the marauders. The fortress is left unfinished and abandoned. This happens to a lot of real estate in Mossflower. Far to the south, on the other side of Mossflower, a plague hits a quiet monastery, Loam Hedge Abbey. The Abbey was founded as a place of peace, but the healthy inhabitants fled north to Mossflower Woods. Martin also arrives from the north. Greeneyes' vermin capture Martin and break his father's sword. Martin swears revenge and soon gets rescued by the Woodlanders. Luckily, Verdaga's daughter Tsarmina Greeneyes would oblige that revenge very quickly into the novel Mossflower. Tsarmina takes command and crowns herself Queen of Mossflower, making every effort to invade and enslave the Woodlanders. She was like the Negan of the Redwall series, mad with power, abusive, and poisoning her father and imprisoning her brother. The refugees from Loam Hedge Abbey arrive at Brock Hall, which acts as headquarters to the Council of Resistance in Mossflower and led by a descendant of Lord Brocktree, Bella. Martin and some friends travel to Salamandastron for military support. This is when the sword of Martin is forged out of a piece of star. To defeat Greeneyes, the Woodlanders flood Katir by rerouting a nearby river, eventually turning the area into a lake and destroying the castle. Martin defeats Tsarmina in a duel. Over time, the short-lived Lake Katir drains away. The sunken ruins are used as foundation to recreate a place of peace that used to be Loam Hedge. Construction of Redwall Abbey begins on top of the ruins of Katir. Martin and a small team would quest west to find out the fate of his father Luke. The remaining hordes and pirate bands continue to attempt to organize and continue to be thwarted by our protagonists. A generation later, in Mariel of Redwall, a pirate group known as Sea Rats operating out of Fort Bladegirt on the island of Terramort, led by Gabool the Wild, kidnap Joseph the Bellmaker while his daughter escapes into Mossflower and to Redwall. After raids against Redwall, the Long Patrol suffers heavy losses. A counterattack is mounted with the help of the rallied Terramort resistance against Gabool, and Fort Bladegirt is overtaken. Meanwhile, in the novel The Bellmaker, on the other side of the southern desert, a raider tribe led by Fox Ungan Negru from the far north find themselves in a kingdom called Southsword. Ruled by a pretty nice king and queen, the Northern Army takes control over Castle Floret, the seat of Southsword, and imprison Gale Squirrel King. With the help of some more protagonists, they rescue the queen and spring the king out of jail. he immediately puts together an army of Southsworders and Redwallers to retake his kingdom. Lord Ronblade of Salamandastron commissions Joseph the Bellmaker for a new bell inscribed with ancient Badger script, only translatable by a Badger Lord. After the bell gets stolen, Redwall is again attacked by raiders, this time led by Greypatch. Ronblade sees a vision of Martin the Warrior while in battle and defeats the raiders who have been killing hares of the Long Patrol. After the conflict, he gifts the bell to Redwall in commemoration of Martin. During the book Salamandastron, a green island to the west has its otter queen murdered while traveling, her island invaded, and her people enslaved by wildcats. The mountain fortress gets attacked again. The events of this book are not terribly significant. The ruler of Salamandastron, Earthstripe, dies in a duel with raider leader Farago and is succeeded by Earthwhite. An earthquake destroys the remaining ruins of Lomehedge Abbey, after which a slaver band move in and name it the Kingdom of Malcaris. There's a period of prolonged peace in the region, pushing time forward another generation. Finally, the book in the series you've probably actually read, the eponymous Redwall. It's the first book published and as such, fits the least in with the larger narrative of the universe. This is when Matthias of Redwall quests to recover Martin's sword, which at some point during the peace was taken by King Bullspera of the sparrows that live in and around the Abbey, who in turn lost it to Asmodeus, the giant snake that lives in the region of Mossflower. After fighting off Cluny the Scourge in the late Rose-Summer Wars, Matthias marries and fathers a son, Matimio. I'm going to stop here for now, or we're going to be here all night. The plots of all of these novels are rather formulaic. There are still 10 more books I need to cover, but they're all variants of the same raider bands threatening Redwall or other peaceful communities, rediscovering old ruins and abandoned structures. Over the 20-book saga, we are introduced to multiple generations of badgers and mice from a lineage of warriors, leaders, and monks. These events are small and usually only to benefit the short term of their group or community and focusing on one or two conflicts. There are lots of themes of revenge in each book, and each book is episodic in its presentation. What I can infer from this detailed look is that Redwall sits between three major city-states. Closest is Salamandastron, led by the Badgers and the Long Patrol. To the south, there's the Southsword Kingdom, but led by the Squirrels from Castle Floret. And to the north, there's Riftguard, which is mighty but drives the slave labor market that plagues all of Mossflower. There are also a handful of island cities to the east and the west, often long voyages away, and are also a big source of piracy. Redwall is a vast and a multi-generational epic to rival that of Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings, a series fit for any furry. Its spiritual successor is the graphic novel/web series Mouseguard, which we may also cover in a future episode of Culturally Effed. Do you want to see more episodes about the Redwall series? Should we continue this episode and summarize the events of the second half of the saga? Or would you rather see an analysis of the religion, philosophy, or society of the Redwall universe? Let us know down in the comments, and if there's enough demand, we will get to work on it right away. I have been your host, Arrkay. Thanks for watching.
Oh. It's Master Rusty here to say your tiger claws no match for my bunny hop. In order to get your black belt in furry, make sure you're subscribed and you tag some friends you think might like these videos. If you like what we do, please help support us on Patreon with monthly donations, or if you'd rather not, you can get a one-time t-shirt purchase with these buttons down here. And as always, thanks for watching. I've been Master Sensei Rusty. Thank you for watching. I will see you in our next battle. Battle of knowledge and furriness. No, please don't hurt me.